Hi there, this is Rachel Stone introducing the new podcast, Transformational Leadership. All elements of leadership, but especially transformational leadership, which includes learning to be a coach while you're a leader. All coaches are leaders, but not all leaders are coaches. And my mission is to help solve that. I hope you enjoy.
Hi there, Sharon. Thank you very much for joining me and welcome to all our listeners. I'm so grateful that the trusted executive team have got behind me on this. I'm so passionate about this model and I really want to share with people all the basics of it. There's the book that's out there, there's the website, but these are all about finding out about the habits. And day one is about habit one. For people who don't know, we've got 3 pillars. We used to have 2. It used to be intellectual ability and power. And you can no longer rely on the power of authority. You have to have trust to enable people to really believe in you and to follow you. The 3 pillars are, number 1, ability, number 2, integrity, and number 3, benevolence. And under each pillar, there are 3 habits. So we're starting with the first habit, and I want to focus on choosing to deliver. And I'm going to talk to Sharon, the managing partner, and she's also been with CEO for a number of years. She's a fellowship board co-chair, CEO and executive coach. I'm going to ask you, Sharon, to tell me your understanding and your perspective of what it means for a habit of choosing to deliver.
Normally, it seems to be quite a simple one, deliver results. But actually, for me, it's one of the more complex habits, even though it's been around for a long time. And that's because it's in tension with a lot of the other habits. As you said, the 9 habits of trust, and delivers one of them. But without delivering, without having results, you actually don't have anything. And so therefore, the other 8 habits don't come into play. If you're a business and you're not delivering results, then you're not going to stay in business for very long, are you? The aspects of delivery are fairly well known. That is meeting commitments, keeping promises, it's executing, delivering the tasks that you have been set. And our self-assessment questionnaire, interestingly, the first question that we ask is, I am careful when making promises. And I score myself fairly high on that one because I am very careful on making promises, because I hate to not deliver when I've committed to something. That's how I understand the habit of deliver. And it's a really important, it's the first one in the pillar of ability, and really good to be talking about it with you today.
Well, thanks very much. I think of deliver on 2 levels, a bit like all the things you've just said. Each individual person has to deliver, otherwise nothing moves forward. The leadership team must deliver because people won't follow them if they don't trust them. You're only a leader if you have followers. Why should somebody choose to follow you? Do you do the things you set out to do? Do you move forward yourself? So I think delivery from an individual level is one perspective, but we've also got delivery from the whole organisation perspective. If an organisation doesn't deliver, it loses everything. It loses its reputation, takes years to build up and 2 seconds to destroy. I never forget the guy from Samuel's that time when he rubbished his business in 3 seconds. Can't remember his name, but those things where you've built up this reputation because you deliver. If you think of it from an organisation perspective, of course that stands, but then down on the individual level, you get that delivery from interpersonal relationships. Do you do what you say you're going to do? Of course, that's very much linked to the other pillar, integrity. So all of these things are like a puzzle that fit together in an organisation in your vast experience. And you've seen great delivery happening. What sort of things have you noticed?
There's lots of things that are happening, that people are being valued and rewarded for delivering. That's something that's tangible, and they're rewarded for doing that, obviously. But also there's an element of not just focusing on results. There's a learning environment. So there's scope to not deliver in the process of getting to a better practice. So obviously you don't want to do that all the time. But if somebody does make a mistake or somebody does not deliver on something, then there's a learning process, and we haven't failed. We're just in our learning, and we're going to get better. We're going to improve. So that's always there. There's always a great communication about what the intention is. There's a lot of clarity on what the expectations are in terms of delivery. So we don't let people go out of meetings. You know how that happens when you've got somebody who's gung-ho and they're saying, oh, this is the vision and this is what you need to deliver. And then everybody leaves and they all start doing something different because the intention hasn't been clear. Other things that I see is that there's a support system within an organization to help and to enable people to deliver. That's really important because organizations are very busy. And so there has to be a support system there. and people have to be given opportunity to manage their workload effectively so they can deliver. Talking about workloads, making visible what people are working on helps people not to get overloaded. I've seen people that are tasked by many and it's not visible, and so they become overwhelmed. So there's lots of elements there in terms of the kind of environment that produces great results. I think the last one I'm thinking of is that you have a mix of people. You don't just have people in an organization that are just deliver, just results orientated. You've got to have a mix of people. You've got to have people who'll challenge. You've got to have the thinkers. You've got to have the creatives. It can't just all be about delivering on results, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later in the other habits.
I think you picked on a really good point there around delivery. How do you ensure that you are aware of what you're meant to be delivering? That clarity of expectation is such an interesting piece of work, because I always say it always comes back to two things. Anything that happens well or anything that happens not so well comes down to communication and relationships. So let's face it, in the place of work, one person interacts with another human being, they get something going there, and then after that, loads of stuff happens. Even though we've got masses of technology and automation and all of those things, if we don't have that delivery piece of this is what I'm clearly expecting you to do, and this is what's clearly going to be the outcome, it can't happen. So when it goes really well, you can see really, really good things happening. You can see all the things you've mentioned. And also tracking all of this. Nowadays we've got all of these apps, these pieces of automation that can help people know what they've got to deliver and their progress towards it. So things are really on the up from that point of view. In terms of delivery, it's much easier now.
So we have fellowship boards and we have fellowship board members. I'm not an expert in delivery. Some of our members on our fellowship boards, they are real experts on delivery in terms of their CEOs or senior leaders of very large organizations. Even the smaller organizations, they have stakeholders, they have governance, they're delivering on many different things. So I consider them the experts and I learn from them all the time. It's just an important habit. And of course, in terms of metrics, this is the one that leaders tend to focus in on. It's the one that they find the most easy in terms of what are the metrics, because it's that results column that's been around for a long time. And so there's KPIs usually in place, there's stakeholder feedback, there's percentages of delivery, there's all kinds of metrics that are out there for this habit.
Katie Mason, coming to the studio. Thanks for joining us,
Hey.
Katie. Another question then around this. What I want to emphasise is that in this habits model, we're talking very much about the choosing to deliver. Do you want to tell me a little of your experience around that, on what you've noticed in perhaps your fellowship board meetings, or what do people talk about when it comes to this aspect, which is so important around choosing these habits, especially in choosing delivery?
Another element on our self-assessment questionnaire, which is going to be available to people, is do you use a proven system for tracking and the execution of the delegation of tasks? That's choosing to deliver. That's being proactive about how you're prioritizing your tasks, what you're doing, and choosing to deliver over some of the other things is an important choice that you need to make. Because as I said right at the beginning, without results, your trustworthiness is diminished. Every leader has to have at least awareness of, if not perfection in, all of the habits. And so if you've got a room full of people who are dreamers or visionaries, but nobody who is prepared to or committed to or chooses to deliver, you don't get ahead and you don't get the results. So it's a really important element, and it's something that you literally put your mind to. So that's why it's a choosing to deliver.
I totally love the fact that you can't have a room full of dreamers and you can't have a room full of doers. We need that balance, don't we? One thing that's mentioned in the book, The Trusted Executive, is that when you find it hard, and I think John calls it the cracks in the pillars, when these things aren't going well, what are some of the things you've coached people on around delivery that could be something that could benefit the audience? What are the things you've noticed around delivery that commonly fall down?
Some of the barriers to delivery, and there can be quite a few, are when you don't have clear priorities or when you have constraints in resources. There's elements of overcommitting, and that's due to some of the tensions that I'd like to talk about in a little bit between the habit of deliver and the other habits in the 9 habits. There's elements of that overcommitment can happen for numbers of reasons. And I think one of the biggest barriers to what I call holistically delivering, or delivering on everything, not just results, is when you're really pressured to deliver, and that narrows your focus. And the other things, the more longer term things that you might be putting into place, might go out the window. I get this a lot coaching the people that I coach is I've got these pressures from stakeholders or pressures from investors. I have to deliver. My strategy has gone out the window because I'm focusing just on short-term results. And often that comes at the expense of the longer-term investment that you need to make, which slows down the delivery aspect and makes it difficult. So the things that you can do to overcome some of those is you've got to align your words with your actions. So if you're culture-led, you're values-led, you can't let all of those values go out the window because you're focusing in just on delivering results.
And actually, I think that's a really topical point, because there's emphasis now with the work that Mary Portas has done and many others, and the B Corp movement around doing business a better way and the kindness economy. And if we just did go back, I think it was Milton Friedman who said profit at all costs, you've got no other responsibility other than to deliver a profit. I just don't think that stands now, because we've got visibility, we've got transparency. I mean, years ago, people might, for example, not worry about the fact they've polluted a river. A little village has got ruined because of this toxic waste. Within half an hour now, that would be all over the internet. So one, it's not a good way to operate in that way anyway. And two, you simply just cannot get away. In the old days, like you could just sweep it under the carpet. Now, delivery at all costs just doesn't stand anymore, which is why I'm so pleased that I came across this work. And it fits so well with other initiatives, the Better Business Act that people are talking about. Doing things properly, doing things the right way. Yes, deliver, but not at all costs. Balancing out all the habits and all of the stakeholders, people, planet, profit, results, relationships, and reputation.
Yeah, you have to balance out delivery with ethics and quality. Is what you're doing ethical? Is what you're producing and delivering quality? Because your reputation and, as you say, your relationships are based on that. And if you're not delivering in the right way, or you're delivering to the detriment of other things, then that is really going to impact you. Ethical practices and quality have to be non-negotiables in that delivery process. Really, really important.
We just looked there at the macro scale, for example, delivering and your impact in the world. But even on a very tiny, minute scale with the minutiae, when you come in and you, as a leader, deliver your greeting to your fellow board members or your team or the person on the car park gate or the people that you're walking past in the corridor, there's an element of delivery in that. Taking on board this habit of choosing to deliver, you're delivering your role as a senior leader. If you come in and grunt at somebody, that's going to affect your trust. I mean, we're not saying don't be authentic, but at the same time, there is an element of choosing to have a delivery of your performance in each day and in every interaction that you have. It's all part of the whole, isn't it? And it's a ripple effect.
We relate that to the habit of consistency, which we'll talk about later. But most definitely, we often say at the Trusted Exec that, yes, if you choose to be a leader, you're choosing to be a leader 24/7. That might not necessarily have been the case in the past, where not everything that you did was being measured or seen or visible or able to be videoed or whatever. But it is now. And so therefore, yeah, that delivery piece, but it's all of the habits, to be honest, not just the deliver element.
You mentioned earlier when you were speaking about the assessment. I'd really like to tell everybody more about this assessment, because I think if we're going to improve leadership and we're going to operate business in a much better way, we need to say, well, where are we now in terms of how do we know whether people trust us or not? How do we assess our own levels of trust that we've got in ourselves or other people's trust in us? If we want to improve, we've got to say, well, where are we now? So that we can say what we need to improve on. Would you just talk us through the resources that are available for that?
On our website, there's just a quick self-assessment. We use it often in our workshops, in our initial keynotes with our clients. Very simple to fill out, it takes a few minutes, and it just asks some pertinent questions around the various habits. And you can download that, you can fill it out. And then what we tend to do is say, okay, that's great, that's your self-assessment. However, feedback is the breakfast of champions. And why don't you use that self-assessment with a trusted group of people and get them to give you some feedback on whether you actually do the things that you think you do? Because we've all got blind spots. I've got my trusted system of delegating and tracking tasks, but it's quite cavemanish or cavewomanish. You should always be open to feedback from other people. Plus, we have our survey, which is a wider organizational thing, but that's a bigger element. Download the self-assessment. It's a great place to start.
Of course, because we know where we are then, and then we're hoping to move forwards to get to a better place. And if anybody wants to access those resources and get in touch, that would be really good. So we've covered a lot of ground. First habit number one, our first ever one of these. One of the other habits is being brave, and I certainly feel we've done that. So thank you so much for coming on here and being part of this And here's to doing business a better way through being a trusted executive. Thanks very much,
Thanks.
Sharon.